All right, so recently we added another power pole to our boat. All right, so this is a 2023 power pole blade, 8 foot, to have two now on the boat. This is a 2013 blade here. Now the biggest difference with the two different age groups of the pumps is that this one back here with this pump is a Sea Monster 1, and the new one is a Sea Monster 2. So Power Pole actually sells an upgrade kit, new motor to go on the existing pump to make it the Sea Monster 2 version. That way I can use one remote and work both poles. So couldn't find anything on YouTube as far as videos, so I'm going to try to do one myself. It looks pretty straightforward. I got this from extremeboat.com. They're out of Brandon, Florida. Shout out to Scott. He was extremely helpful and knowledgeable. Shipping was next day. Now granted, I'm an hour away from him, but flat rate, 25 bucks. Next day shipping is pretty good. So stick with me. I'm no mechanic by any means, but I know how to turn a wrench a little bit, so we're gonna give it a shot. All right, so first things first, we've got to disconnect the power. This is an older boat. It's really dirty back here. I'm gonna clean it once this is done, but looks like someone had done something previous. So the power coming off, there's a connection for the positive. So I'm gonna cut it there and redo the connections and make everything nice and neat. There's let's see if I can find it here for you. Another connection for the negative wire there. I'm gonna redo it, and I think it's a 14 millimeter that holds the two bolts on the back, as well as 14 millimeter to loosen up those two hydraulic lines. So you're gonna want something. I'm old-fashioned redneck, got a Coke can that I'm gonna stick both of those hydraulic lines into. That way I'm not pouring it all down in the bottom of my boat. And then I'll get back with you here in just a second. All right, so here's my old pump. This is the Sea Monster 1. And if you're not sure as to what power pole pump that you have, if it looks like that, that's Sea Monster 1. If it looks like this with the orange, that's Sea Monster 2. This is the new technology. This is the old technology. Now, this is absolutely disgusting, and I'm almost embarrassed that I've bought the boat used. I mean, it's 10 years old, but I've owned it for about 2 years, so I'm kind of embarrassed that it looks like this. I was recently doing some YouTube watching and saw that people changing their hydraulic oil in this, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. We bought the new power pole, added it, realized that they weren't compatible, so here we are. So this is kind of a two-step thing, how to change your pump oil, as well as the CM1 to a CM2 upgrade, which, like I said a little while ago, that I haven't been able to find any kind of YouTube tutorial. So this is leaking out of the up and down. If you're not sure, it says up here and down here. We're gonna end up taking this whole thing off. That way I can clean the filters. There's two little filters on the bottom. But in the meantime, just to kind of stop this from continuing to leak out, I'm gonna dump it here into my oil catch can. Curious to see what it looks like. Yeah, that's pretty nasty. Pretty nasty. Looks like there's been, oh boy, that's embarrassing. Water and some sludge, and look at that thick goop coming out of there. That's gross. So, and like I said, once I'm gonna take all this off and clean the tank out really well, because I don't want that stuff getting into the filter and making it worse than it already is. So looking at the instructions here, I've already done step 1. Okay, disconnected. I ended up pulling the whole thing out. Step 2, using a Phillips head screwdriver, unscrew the 4 screws that attach the pump cap to the motor assembly. So that would be these 4 screws, 3 screws here. Step 3, unscrew the 2 Phillips head bolts that hold the motor assembly to the pump housing. It's going to be that one and that one. Once that comes off, the ribbon just looks like the ribbon just broke. So damn sure not using this. Let's set this down here to the side. All right, so that's the top of the actual pump. Step 4 was lift the motor assembly and rubber O-ring off, which is what I just did. I'm going to double check to make sure if I need to save this O-ring or if I can remove it. I'm going to double check and look at the new one here in just a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove 1, 2, 3, and this nut here to take the actual motor, or I'm sorry, the pump off so I can get to the filters and so I can clean out this tank really, really well. All right, so once you've got those 3 screws and that 1 bolt out, this will literally just pop up. Now, when you flip it over, these are the 2 gaskets, or I'm sorry, the filters. They're like a paper mesh type. You see that sludge that's on there? You're just gonna gently wipe that off. That way the filters aren't clogged. So I've got the tank now clean, and I'm going to continue getting ready to remount all of this on here. I'm probably going to start just by remounting the pump itself onto the tank. I'm going to try to clean up that O-ring a little bit without damaging it. Careful of here, which I just found out the hard way, is that the coupler slot will fall out. I don't know if it's supposed to or not, but the coupler slot will fall out when you start to kind of hold this stuff upside down. So make sure that you're doing this over a flat surface. I'm using the back of my golf cart right now, so luckily I didn't lose it, but just you know, pay attention to that. I'm gonna wipe this grease off here. I've got some Yamalube marine grease that I'm gonna to put in there as well. All right, so now I'm gonna get back to the instructions here. I put some grease on that. I went on ahead and kind of rubbed my finger around that O-ring there. Now, you don't have to do this if you're just doing the CM2 upgrade, but by looks of my tank and everything like that, I went on ahead and did that. Just kind of some routine maintenance that's been neglected for a while. So up to this point, now we're going to grab the new pump. We're going to take the cap off. We're going to take off the membrane here shown in figure 2, and then we're going to pry the circuit board out. So I'm going to wash my hands up real good. I don't want any kind of grease or anything like that on the circuit board, I wouldn't think. But that's pretty straightforward. And then once we get to that point to flip the page, I'll get back with you. Think about here, it says make sure that you don't touch the antenna, which the antenna appears to be that right there. So definitely don't want to touch that you know, with your dirty fingers. All right, so when you use the cap to pry it out, those 2 long rods are kind of what's holding it in here into those 2 slots. So just be gentle. I kind of went around each side. I didn't want to break anything. So now that we flipped over to the back, it says remove the 2 nuts with a 3/8 wrench. This little desi pack here, go ahead and just set it to the side. You're going to save it. You're going to reuse it. The 2 3/8 bolts are here on the bottom. Go ahead and take those off. Do not lose this rubber gasket. Got those 2 bolts removed. Again, keep that rubber gasket. It says step 5, position the new motor assembly on top of the pump housing, making sure that the motor shaft lines up with the coupler slot. So when you put this on here, you can kind of eyeball the little shaft on the bottom of this to make sure that it's in line with that coupler slot. If not, I just used a because like I said earlier, mine fell out, so I used that flathead screwdriver to turn that this direction so this would slide on. Now you'll feel this kind of click down, and then you're going to tighten these 2 screws here with a Phillips head screwdriver. All right, so those 2 are tightened down. What I did is I kind of just went back and forth between the 2. Didn't want to over tighten it one direction. You'll kind of feel this cup moving back and forth this direction as it's sliding down. This is what's putting that the gear into the coupler slot. So number 7 Install the circuit board. Make sure that the deci pack is on top of the motor assembly. Figure 7A. So 7A is here. So we're going to make sure that this little pack here that we set to the side is back in the back. In order to, my hands are all greasy now. In order to reinstall this circuit board, I set it here to the side. I don't want to get it all nasty and greasy. Let me set this down for just a second. All right, it's going to go back face up. Those two prongs there are going to go down in that groove. I'll do this as gently as possible. There we go. Just be gentle here. And go back down. Again, remember, don't touch that antenna. I don't really want to touch a lot of this, but you got to, I guess. All right. Install the membrane. Make sure it seats squarely in the motor casing. So these buttons here are going to go right over that. There's a little channel going around it that will make sure it gets pushed in nice and tight. It's back on, looks something like that. You can hear it clicking. Everything's working there. Reinstall the pump cap. You may need to push up on the wire harness while pushing down on the cap. So if we're going here, it says push up on the wire harness while pushing down on the cap. So we might have to push up here on this point. It's the wire harness, it'll clip out, clip in. We can push up here. Boom, while it clips in. Nice and tight on the membrane. Deci pack still in there. Should be waterproof. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this back in my boat. The bracket that's already in there, 2 bolts will go here in the back. I'm going to reattach my up and my down. Again, if you can't remember, if you're looking at the pump like this, up is on the left, down is on the right. All right, so I'm going to work on getting this cleaned up here a little bit. I put my hoses in that Coke can just so they weren't leaking all over the place. But that's the L bracket that the pump actually goes to, held on by those 2 bolts there that will screw right into the back here. Once I get that mounted, I'll put my hoses back on just so that way it's, you know, not flexing and it's easy to hold on to. All right, so it's a few days later. Just got kind of busy, but this is the new pump mounted. Cleaned up a little bit. My jack plate hydraulic hoses are deteriorating, so got a lot of the pieces, you know, on the bottom of the boat that needs a little bit more TLC, but for the most part, this was a super simple job. You know, didn't really see a whole lot of anything online, you know, to reference or to watch, so that's why I really wanted to make this video. If you have any kind of, you know, a little bit of mechanical background, then you can do this. So I reconnected the power lines to the battery, to my 1-2 all off switch, so, and then just ran the ground directly to the battery. So pretty straightforward, a little bit of patience. You know, it took me about, I don't know, an hour, maybe 2 hours, you know, taking breaks, reading the instructions and filming this as I was going. So definitely doable.